which was to change and shape my life. Out of no consequence, except to say that I had been serving as an army doctor in the Second Afghan War. I was wounded and dispatched home in frail health. For 9 months, I stayed in a private hotel in the Strand, leading a comfortless, meaningless existence, and spending as much money as I had, considerably more freely than I ought. So alarming did the state of my finances become, that I soon realized that I must either leave the metropolis and rusticate somewhere in the country, or make a complete alteration to my style of living. I was without kith or kin to concern me, and therefore I was, I suppose, as free as air.
Or as free as an army pension of 11 shillings and 6pence a day will permit a man to be. Watson, tell the truth.
Oh!
Or as much of it as your gullible public can digest. No. We shall not skirt round. Your gallant contribution to that disastrous war.
My part in it was insignificant.
Appointed assistant surgeon to the 5th Northumberland Fusiliers. You arrived in Bombay to find the second Afghan war had broken out. You made your way through the passes deep into enemy territory. You reached Kandahar by a miracle, took up your duties. You were dispatched to join the Berkshires, just in time for the fatal Battle of Maiwand. You were struck in the shoulder by a Jezeel bullet which shattered the bone, grazed the subclavian artery. You would have fallen to the hands of the murderous Ghazis, but for the courage and devotion shown by your orderly. What was his name?
Murray.
Murray. Who threw you across a pack horse and brought you safely to the British line.
It is recorded. I have recorded.
That phrase that you used in your account to describe the London you found on your return.
Pray.
Oh, don't you remember that great cesspool into which all the idlers and loungers of the empire are irresistibly drained?
I said that.
And since I've never known you to make a dishonest observation in your life, it was the truth. Oh, no, the fact is, the man I met in the chemical laboratory of Bart's hospital was penniless, exhausted, and deeply disillusioned. It was Stanford who introduced us, was it not?
Yes, he warned me against you.
I can't think why. I scarcely knew the fellow.
Well, he'd seen you in the dissecting room, beating the subjects with a stick, to verify how far bruises may be produced after death.
The enthusiasm of youth. No, I've always had a passion for definite and exact knowledge.
Holmes was looking for someone to go halves with him in some lodgings he had found which were too much for his purse.
No. Do you mind the smell of strong tobacco?
Oh, no. I always smoke ships myself.
That's good enough. I generally have chemicals devised, and I occasionally do experiments. Would that annoy you?
By no means.
What are my other shortcomings? That is my share. I sometimes fall into the dumps, so I don't speak for days on end. You mustn't think I'm sulky when I do that. Just leave me alone, and I'll soon be all right. And please.
Oh, thank you.
What do you have to confess? Just as well for two fellows to get to know the worst of one another before they start living together.
I get up at all sorts of extraordinary hours. I'm extremely lazy. Oh, and I object to rouse. My nerves are shaken.
You include the violin in your category of rouse?
Violin? Well, that depends upon the player. A well-played violin is a treat for the gods. A badly played one.
Oh, that's all right, then. Whether we can consider the matter settled if the rooms are agreeable. You can manage the terms?
Yes, indeed.
You've been in Afghanistan, I perceive.
Yes. How the deuce did you know that?
Well, my reasoning tells me that here is a gentleman of a medical type and with the air of a military man, clearly an army doctor then. He has just come from the tropics, but his face is dark, but that is not the natural tint of his skin, for his wrists are fair. He has seen hardship and sickness, and his left shoulder has been wounded. Now, where are the tropics? Could an English army doctor have seen such hardship and got himself wounded clearly in Afghanistan?
That's wonderful.
That's commonplace. The whole thought did not occupy a second.
Well, how do you put these powers to use?
It's my trade.
Trade?
I'm a consulting detective. It's high on my bread and cheese.
Oh, like, Edgar Allan Poe's Dupin.
Dupin?
Yeah.
I suppose you think I've complimented me. No, was a very inferior child. That trick of his, of breaking in on a friend's thought with a clever remark. So strange, so superficial.
Oh, well, he had some analytical genius.
But half as much as Poe appeared to imagine.
Have you read Gaborio's works? Does Lecoq come up to your idea of
Lecoq! Miserable bungler! That book, it made me positively ill. You know, he took 6 months to identify an unknown poisoner. I could have done it in 24 hours.
Holmes,
Yes.
do you think me impertinent if I put your gifts to a more severe test? I have here a watch which recently came into my possession. Would you do me the kindness to give an opinion as to the character or habits of the late owner?
There is hardly any data. It has recently been cleaned.
Yes. Yes.
Subject to your correction, I would say that it belonged to your elder brother, who inherited it from your father, H.W., who has been dead these many years. Your brother was left with good prospects, but he threw away his chances, lived for some time in poverty with occasional short intervals of prosperity, until finally, taking to drink, he died. That is all I can gather.
That is unworthy of you, Holmes. You have made inquiries into the history of my unhappy brother. It was Stanford, wasn't it? And now you pretend to deduce this knowledge in some fanciful way. It is not kind. And to speak plainly, it has a touch of charlatanism about it.
My dear doctor, I crave your forgiveness. Viewing the matter as an abstract problem, I forgot how personal and painful a thing it might be to you. However, I do assure you, I didn't even know that you had a brother until you handed me that watch. If you look at it more closely, you will see that it is cut and marked all over from the habit of keeping it next to coins and keys in the same pocket. Thus your brother was careless. The watch is worth, shall we say, 50 guineas, so he was well provided for. Now, if you will look at the inner plate, you will see that it does carry the mark of a pawnbroker. Look at those thousands of scratches around the keyhole. What silverman's key could have scored those grooves? And yet you will never find a drunkard's watch without them. He winds it at night and leaves those traces of his trembling hand. The watch is now in your possession, so the poor fellow must have died. I mean, where is the mystery in all this?
That's wonderful.
No, it's not. It's elementary. Now, you'll learn my methods, Watson, in time. Hey! What is the use of having brains in my profession? I know that I have to make my name famous. No man has ever lived who's brought the same amount of study and natural talent to the art of detection which I have done. But what is the result? But the crimes, the criminals these days. Oh, it's true that most of us some bungling villainy with a motive so transparent that even a Scotland Yard detective could see through it. You bet.
Oh, no. Playing rugby for Blackheath was my main sporting achievement. For the first week or so, we had no callers, and I concluded that Holmes was as friendless as I myself was. I soon found I was mistaken, however, when a stream of nondescript individuals began to arrive at odd hours. One little rat-faced, dark-eyed fellow, introduced to me as Mr. Lestrade. Oh, he came 3 or 4 times. And I remember there was a grey-haired, seedy man, looking like a Jewish peddler. He was closely followed by a slipshod elderly woman, trailing a lame whip with it, all of them preventing me the use of my own sitting room.
They are my clients. Would you mind leaving the room for an hour or so?
The next thing I noticed in those early days was that Holmes' ignorance was as remarkable as his knowledge.
Watson is very well read. He can quote anything from contemporary literature.
Upon my quoting Thomas Carlyle, he inquired in the naivest way what crime he had committed.
He is very well informed about the Copernican theory.
My surprise reached a climax when I found him to be ignorant of the Copernican theory and the composition of the solar system.
Whereas I have no knowledge of such things.
That any human being in the 19th century should not be aware that the Earth travels round the sun appeared to me to be such an extraordinary fact I could hardly believe.
But you see, Watson, I consider a man's brain to be like a little empty attic. And you must stock it with such furniture as you choose.
I drew up a list.
Watson.
Holmes, his limitations. Knowledge of literature, nil. Philosophy, nil. Astronomy, nil. Politics, feeble. Botany, variable. Well up in belladonna, opium, and poisons generally.
Only a fool takes in all the lump.
Knows nothing of practical gardening. Knowledge of geology, practical but limited. Tells at a glance different soils from each other.
It's a mistake to think that little attic room has elastic walls.
Knowledge of chemistry, profound. Anatomy, accurate but unsystematic.
It is essential, therefore, not to have the useless facts elbowing out the useful ones.
He is familiar with 42 different impressions of bicycle tires. His knowledge of sensational literature, immense, appears to know every detail of every horror perpetrated in the century. Plays the violin well, is an expert single-stick player, boxer, swordsman, and has a good practical knowledge of British law.
You see, he lists all my virtues, ignores his own.
But the solar system...
What about it, Watson? I mean, now that you've told me, I should do my best to forget it.
Forget it.
Tell me that we go around the sun.
Yes!
If we went on the moon, it would not make a penny worth of difference to me or my work.
First discovered his habit, I was appalled. Being a medical man, I knew the damage which brought more peril to my friend than all the storms of his tempestuous life. Yes, I found I lacked the courage to protest. Again and again, I registered a vow that I would deliver my soul upon the subject.
Watson, I would have been dead within 2 years. A man needs a companion. He cannot sit alone. With his silent reproaches, his hurt look, Watson controlled by addiction. And our walks, our conversations, the sheer breadth and enthusiasm of his mind on any manner of subjects kept me sane. When the black fits were upon me, there never was a better friend. And I treated him abominably. Watson, congratulate me. I'm engaged to be married.
Thank you. Very congratulations. To whom?
The Milverton's housemaid. I needed information.
Oh, you've gone too far.
No, it was the most necessary step. I'm a plumber with a rising business. Escort by name. I've walked with her and I've talked with her. Heavens, those talks.
But the girl!
God, that wasn't God to help. One must play one's cards as best one can when such a stake is on the table. However, I do rejoice to tell you that I do have a hated rival who will cut me out the moment my back is turned. Ah, what a splendid night it is.
There was only one woman in Holmes' life. Her name was Irena Adler. She was an opera singer from New Jersey. Mistress to a king. And quite one of the most ravishing beauties I have ever seen. Oh, it was not that Holmes felt any emotion akin to love for her, but a trained reasoner to admit such intrusions might be to throw doubt upon all his mental results. But whenever he speaks of her, or refers to her photograph, it is always under the honourable title of the woman.
Watson, these little records you keep of our cases, I cannot congratulate you upon them. Detection is or should be an exact science, and should be treated in the same cold and emotional manner. You have attempted to tinkle with romanticism, which has much the same effect as if it were a love story or development is the fifth proposition of Euclid.
At the beginning, I seem to remember you complimenting me on my honest observation.
What you see, what your pen commits to paper, they're two different things.
Well, will you have me describe you warts and all? Really, Holmes, I think this attack is quite unjustifiable. I have brought you in front of a wide public who demonstrated an insatiable appetite for your inventions. And they keep clamouring for more. The very least my words have done is to bring you to the attention of the most powerful and the most in need. I have created your business for you.
That's nonsense.
Oh, yes. Would they know Sherlock Holmes? Would they know Baker Street without my publication?
We are far too sensitive. You cannot take a soup swallow criticism.
Oh, well. Can you, Holmes? Wouldn't you have me record your failure?
What failure? It was a joke. No, your value to me is inestimable. You're right to chide me. But when my brain is inactive, Watson, I cannot help myself. How you have stuck it out these many years, I shall never know.
I stick it out, old man, because like you, I have to make a living.
But he was right. Oh, yes, he was right. You see, times are hard. Well, we are reaching the end of a century where the rich get richer and the poor become ever more neglected. Well, see, those ragged little street urchins. The scarecrows. I mean, look at their naked feet and their eager, expectant faces. It's monstrous. Monstrous. Ah, what a cheery thing it is to leave London by any of these lines which run high and allow you to look down upon the houses.
What's there, Clapham? Those isolated clumps, the board school.
They're the lighthouses, my boy, beacons of the future, capsules with hundreds of little bright seeds each, out of which will spring the wiser, better England of the future.
Never ceases to amaze. Holmes' unexpected breadth of vision and compassion, so unworldly is he or so capricious, that he frequently refuses help to the powerful and wealthy where the problem makes no appeal to his simple wow. He will devote weeks of intense application to some humble client. Watson. Holmes? Oh.
So sorry, miles away. Did you say something?
You called me.
Did I really?
Yeah.
Well. The cruelty of parents to their children. My brother and I, forced by accepted convention of upbringing into such a frosted, trapped, inhibited dark corner that we could not even communicate with each other. My father, absent, though never far away. I heard his voice, his step, but I scarcely exchanged a word with him until I was 12, and mother, poor creature, starved of affection. Yet I never heard her cry. Not one. Her boys shut away in the care of a nurse. Oh, that vicious nurse. In that house. Oh, the terror of silence. Oh, Watson, my ancestors were country squires and seem to have lived a life that is natural to that class. Now, my faculties of observation and deduction may have come from my grandmother, who was a sister of Verne.
Verne?
The French artist. Oh, art in the blood is liable to take the strangest form.
Well, how do you know that it's hereditary?
Because my brother, Mycroft, possesses it to a larger degree than I do.
Your brother? Oh, I didn't know you had a brother. Or relations of any sort. And to acknowledge a brother who is your superior.
You know, I cannot agree with those that rank modesty among the virtues. When I say that my brother Mycroft has better powers of observation than I, you may take it that I'm speaking the exact and literal truth.
Well, does he use these powers for detective work?
Well, if the art of detection began and ended in reasoning from an armchair, my brother would be the greatest criminal agent that ever lived. But he has no ambition, no energy.
Well, what is his profession then?
He works for the British government. Sometimes one might occasionally say that he is the British government. No, it's the truth, Watson. Do you know he has the greatest capacity for storing facts of any man living? I listen, I like. Ministers depend upon my brother. Time and time again, his word has decided the national policy. But my brother is Jupiter. And yet his temper fixes him to a salary of a mere £450 a year. He will receive neither honour nor title, and yet remains the most indispensable man in the country. Now, you see that little doorway over there? What?
Oh, yes.
That is the entrance to the Diogenes Club.
The Diogenes Club? I cannot recall the name.
It contains some of the most unsociable and unclubbable men in London. No member is permitted to take the least notice of any other. No talking is permitted under any circumstances, save in the strangers' room. My brother was a founder member. And I have myself found it a very soothing atmosphere.
Is your brother there now?
Oh, he's always there, every evening between 4:45 and 20 minutes to 8.
Well, am I permitted to meet him?
Too late, Watson. It's just 5 past.
He must have been a remarkable boy to have grown up with. Oh, your household must have been extraordinarily alive with intellectual pursuit.
How much one conceals from a friend. Even a friend as close to me as Watson. How much one covers up. Oh, it was, Watson, it was. Vividly alive!
It pleases me when Holmes feels he can talk frankly about himself. It removes the impression he gives to others, and to myself I confess at times, that he is an isolated phenomenon, a brave without a heart, as deficient in human sympathy, as he is preeminent in intelligence.
Watson, you come at a crisis. If this remains blue, all is well. If it turns red, it means a man's life. You'll find French tobacco in the slipper. Quite a common place for murder. So you have something better. You are the stormy petrel of crime, Watson. What is it?
I'm engaged to be married, Holmes. To Mary Morstan.
The heiress.
Oh, well, if you remember, she lost her fortune.
But I'm really anxious that you feel sufficiently recovered from your ordeals in Afghanistan to be able to contemplate matrimony.
Oh, well, you must take credit for that. It is my acquaintance with you that has revived my spirit.
Not so.
Yes.
You'll be leaving Baker Street.
Well, naturally. You know that for some time I've had a hankering after a return to medicine, and I've managed to secure a practice.
The practice needs a wife.
It helps.
This is excellent, Watson. Oh, excellent. Really, it calls for a celebration.
What, shall I bring her over?
Yes, do. We'll take the dear, sweet creature to Covent Garden.
Oh!
It's a Wagner night, I think.
Well, naturally, I have discussed with her my role as your biographer and frequent companion on your adventures, and she readily assures me that she has no objection to my continuing. Oh, if time permits.
Time, Watson, yes, time. Well. Well, there are a few women in my experience who would be so generous. I'm fond of her already.
Thank you, Holmes. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Oh, Wagner. If music be the food. Mary Morstan is delightful. Very good for Watson, no doubt. I'm lost without my Boswell.
For the first few months of my marriage, I've seen little of Holmes. My own complete happiness and home-centered interests have been sufficient to absorb all my attention. While Holmes, who loathes every form of society with his bohemian soul, remains at our lodgings at Baker Street, alternating between cocaine and ambition, the drowsiness of the drug, and the fierce energy of his own keen nature.
Professor Moriarty, I presume. When the time is right, my friend. When the time is right.
Holmes, can I be of assistance?
Yes. Yes, your presence might be invaluable.
You speak of dangers. You are afraid of something.
Yes, I am.
Of what?
Air guns!
Holmes! Holmes! Oh, my dear fellow! I brought you a cake Mary baked it especially for you.
Ah, tell me, how is Mrs. Watson?
Oh, she's extremely well. Send you her compliment.
This is kind. Oh, dear, so kind. Watson, I think you know me well enough to understand that I am, well, by no means a nervous man. But it would be stupidity, rather than courage, to refuse to admit danger when it is close upon you. So sorry, do you have a match?
Oh, yes, of course.
I suppose you have never heard of Professor Moriarty?
Never.
There is the genius and the wonder of the thing. The man pervades London, and yet no one has heard of him. That is what sets him on a pinnacle.
What has he done?
He is the Napoleon of crime, Watson. He is the organizer of half that is evil, and nearly all that is undetected in this great city. He is a genius, an abstract thinker, a philosopher, a brain of the first order. He sits motionless like a spider at the center of its web. But that web has 1,000 radiations. But he knows well every quiver of each of them.
What is it today, morphine or cocaine?
Don't you! Damn you! Cocaine. A 7% solution. Would you care to try it?
No, indeed. My constitution has not got over the Afghan campaign yet. I cannot afford to throw any extra strain upon it.
You're probably right, Watson. I suppose physically its reaction is a bad one. But I find it so transcendentally stimulating and clarifying to the mind that its secondary action is a matter of small moment.
But consider, count the cost. Your brain may be roused and excited, but it's a pathological and morbid process. It involves increased tissue change. It may at the very least leave a permanent weakness. You know, too, what a black reaction comes upon, surely. Surely the game is hardly worth the candle. Now remember, I speak not only as one comrade to another, but as a medical man.
But my mind rebels at stagnation! Give me problems, give me work, give me the most abstruse cryptogram or the most critical analysis, and I'm in my own proper atmosphere. I can dispense then with artificial speeds. But Watson, I abhor this dull routine of existence. I crave mental exaltation. That is why I've chosen my own particular profession, or rather created it. For I am the only one in the world.
The strain caused by my friend's immense mental exertions in solving a number of cases, his dependence on drugs, and his continuing obsession with Professor Moriarty give me much cause for concern.
Still smoke that Arcadia mixture of our bachelor days. There's no mistake that not the ash upon your return. There's no gentleman visitor at present. Your hat stand proclaims as much. I'll fill a vacant place. You're surprised to see me. Relieved too, no wonder. Oh, you've had the British workman in the house. He is a token of evil. Not the drains, I hope.
Oh, the gas.
He's left two little marks, just here, with his boot on your linoleum. Do you see, just where the light strikes it?
Oh, yes, yes.
No, thank you, I've had dinner. At Waterloo Station.
Ah.
Is Mrs. Watson up?
No, she's away on a visit.
Then you're alone.
Quite.
Oh, well, that does make it easier. For me to propose that you should come away for a week on the continent. To Switzerland.
What happened on that fateful trip is well recorded, and it is not a subject upon which I would willingly dwell. But should there be anyone here ignorant of that appalling event, let me simply say that near the Swiss village of Meiringen, at the falls of Reichenbach, where the torrent, swollen by the melting snow, plunges into a tremendous abyss, Holmes finally confronted his arch enemy, Moriarty. I lost a friend, one whom I regarded as the best and wisest man I've ever known.
What a lovely thing a rose is. There is nothing in which deduction is so necessary as in religion. It can be built up as the exact science by the reasoner. Our highest assurance of the goodness of Providence seems to me to rest in the flowers. All other things, our powers, our desires, our food, are all really necessary for our existence in the first instance. But a rose is an extra. Its smell and its color are an embellishment of life, not a condition of it. It is only goodness which gives extra. And so I say again, we have much to hope from the flowers.
Holmes.
I'm here, my friend.
Holmes! Can I be of assistance? My sense of loss was compounded by the sudden tragic death of my wife, Mary.
Watson, love is the best antidote to sorrow.
It can be imagined that my close intimacy with Sherlock Holmes had interested me deeply in crime. And since his disappearance, I have never failed to read with care all the various problems which come before the public. Among these unfinished cases is that of Mr. James Philemon, who, stepping back into his own house to get his umbrella, was never more seen in this world. No less remarkable was that of the cutter, Alicia, which sailed one spring morning into a small patch of mist, from which she never again emerged, nor was anything further heard of herself or of her crew. A third case worthy of note is that of Isidore Passano, the well-known journalist and duelist. He was found, stark, staring mad, with a matchbox in front of him, which contained a remarkable worm, said to be unknown to science. During these 3 years, I had even attempted more than once to employ Holmes' method, though with indifferent success. One such case recently was the tragic murder of the Honourable Ronald Adair. While standing outside the house where this terrible event took place, I accidentally struck against an elderly bookseller, spilling a pile of books from his hand. My attempted apology was greeted with a snarl of contempt.
You see, I have a conscience, sir. I said to myself, I've just called in to see that kind doctor that if I was a little gruff in my manner, that I meant no harm by
You
it.
make too much of a trifle, sir. Oh, may I ask how you know who I am?
But I own the little bookshop on the corner of Church Street. Very happy to see you at any time, I'm sure. Perhaps you collect. I had here British birds, Catullus, the Holy Wall,
Please, I wonder if
bargains, everyone.
Would you mind waiting outside?
Just the thing that every man needs these days, you know, to complete his library.
I have a number of patients here who require my urgent attention.
Watson, it is so good to stretch oneself. You know, it's no joke taking a foot at one's height for several hours on end. Watson! I owe you 1,000 apologies. But I had no idea that you'd be so effective.
Tuesday's been so busy.